Hi, I'm gonna start it's about 15 minutes into the scheduled starting time. So what we're gonna do today is I'm just gonna start way from the basics and run through how to firstly install Python and then how to write some basic Python. I like an example-based approach, it's all gonna be project focused. So the main important thing is you need any Python version 3. It can be any of the version 3s, preferably the newest one because it's generally more stable, but that doesn't matter. So if you install Python, you go to your downloaded thing, and it's fairly important that you click on the Add Python 3.8 to your path. The reason that that's important is it just allows you to do a lot of the console things and the commands that you send towards Python to make it work. That's the only important bit about that. And then it's just a straightforward installation where you just follow the default settings from there. So I'm just going to install Python quickly. Cool. It's a fairly basic setup. All you need to do is that. So the other requirement that you're going to need for this workshop is just any text editor, anything like Notepad would do. I personally prefer Visual Studio Code. I will post a link to that in the thing. That's only my personal preference. You're more than welcome to use anything that you like that you can type text into. That's all you need. I also have a text version of this workshop. It's more of just the cliff notes and just covers everything I'm going to go through, just roughly in words. It's more of a reference guide than the complete thing. That's also posted in the chat that you're welcome to look at that. I'll make sure that that gets spread around with the video afterwards. It's more just for reference than anything else. Basically, what we'll be doing in this workshop is I will just go through some of the basics of Python, how do you write Python, some of the basic data structures, how to use it, some basic interactions. And in the end of this workshop, you'll have something similar to a, I forgot the word. You'll have a Tamagotchi pretty much. That's just an interactive code toy that you can play with, and it will just introduce you to the core concepts of Python. Cool. So let's jump in. Once you've installed Python, we're just going to write a small basic program to make sure that everything's set up correctly and everything works. This is generally the first code that one writes in a new programming language when you start. It's just a basic hello world program. So how you do that is you just make a text file, make sure it ends on py. That's Python's path extension that it uses. That just makes sure that everything knows that that refers to Python. Cool. Once you've done that, you can just open your file, and then we're simply just going to write print, two circular brackets, with hello world, and a little exclamation mark. So that's simply just calling a built-in function in Python and just a basic line of text, and then we can run this. So the way that I prefer running code at the beginning when one's getting used to Python is simply through a console. The quickest and easiest way to open it relevant to where your file's at is if you're in Windows and there's a space underneath, you hold in Shift on your keyboard, you right-click, and you open PowerShell or CMD or whatever it's called, whatever your thing is called. Then you just type in Python, but make sure it refers to Python. This is also why we tick the use path when we initially install Python. It's so these keywords work. Then you type a dot slash, that just means it's in this folder, and then you just hit tab till it comes up with your script. And seeing as there's only one in this folder, we'll only bring up the one, and there we go. everything set up correctly. Fairly simple way to set up Python. Cool. So from there, let's take it one step further, and let's do some basic variables, and let's talk about what those are. So now we've got just a small test to make sure everything works, and it worked. Awesome. Next, we're just going to create another file. We're going to call this file test, or whatever you want to call it. It also ends on a py. It will ask you if you want to change it. You say yes. That just means it's not a text file. It is a Python script file. Simple as that. Cool. So we're going to start off by using defining a few variables in Python. And what a variable basically is, it's a simple analogy that works is it's similar to a post box that you put values into. So if we're going to make a Tamagotchi programming toy, the basics of what that requires is we need to define a creature that is the data. And the way that we define a creature is we have values that we assign things to. In Python, it's very easy to create a variable. You don't need to define anything specific. You simply give it a name. In this case, it's going to be the name of our creature. So it says name, and then you say what it's equal to. And there's multiple different types of variables. The variables, let me just accept this person. Hi, welcome. In the chat, there's a few links that might be useful. Welcome to the workshop about Python. I'm just running through some of the what the variables are and what we're going to do with them. So just defining a simple basic creature, and the creature is just as an example programming toy to illustrate what variables are and how I can use them. So the various different kinds of variables one gets. The most basic variable that one gets is it's a whole number. But if you go a bit further, you get a collection of characters, which is just a string. And the string you just define by having two quotes, and then you put a value inside. So I'm making a little creature that, let's say it's a cat. So I'm going to call my cat Fluffy, because I call cats Fluffy. And then from there, we're just going to define the next one, which would then be our creature's age. Our creature's age is a whole number. It's only in years or days, or in this case, it's just a whole number. And whole numbers you don't define with quotes. Quotes are only for strings. With whole numbers, you can simply just enter the whole number, whatever it is. In this case, it's 3. There we go. So whole numbers you just type in. Now we say our creature is also going to have a weight. So a weight consists of not necessarily a whole number, but a fraction of a number. A fraction of a number in programming terms is usually referred to as a float. It's just a different word for, I see you say you have bad connection. That's 100% fine. If there's any problems hearing me or anything like that, please let me know. It is raining where I am. I don't know if that's audible over my microphone. Please just let me know and I will dive solve that. So a fraction of a number, you can simply also just type in a variable name, you say what it's equal to, and then the fraction, you completely just type it in. It's not a division that won't make a fraction of a number, it's just a decimal point. That's how you define floats. Another basic type of variable that exists in programming is a boolean, or a bool. What that is, it's a true or false value. And a true or false value is, it's simply a two-state variable that can either be true or false, and that's it. So let's type in another property of our creature. We say, is it hungry? And at the moment, yes, it is hungry. Cool. We've now defined a fairly basic creature, just in a few values. But we also want our creature to have a look to it. So I'm just going to represent that with a string value as well. So I'm just going to call it the photo of our creature, and that's also a string value. And I've got a cute cat emoji in ASCII values. It's also just the simplest thing, but you can just put in. There you go. Cool. So now that we've got this, earlier we used the print term. All that is, it's a built-in Python function that it does something, and all that does is whatever you feed into the print, it then registers the print as a, it just puts it out into the console, similar to how it did with the Hello World example. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to say, to use a variable, you simply just type in the variable name again. So in this case, I'm just going to use the name of the creature, and then I'm going to say plus, and then two of these quotes again. So what I'm doing here is I am combining a variable as well as a extra string just with a plus sign. Strings you can just add together similar to how you would normally do with numbers and those kind of things. It just combines values. Fantastic. Cool. Let's see our thing in action. To run our script, you simply type in Python. You refer to the current folder, and then I'm just going to hit tab. There's now 2. So it first goes hello world. That's not the one I want. I want test. And I hit go, and there it goes. Fluffy says hello. As you see, it's all together exactly as it is here in the example. The words are, however, completely combined, so I'm just going to add a space there. Cool. So those are the few basic variable types that exist and how you can use them, and using one of the built-in functions. Is there anything uncertain or any questions? Sorry, this is my first digital workshop that I'm giving, so I'm not certain if I'm going too fast or if I need to explain something or if there's questions. Yeah, cool. I'm going to assume there aren't any. Cool. Yeah, if I'm going a bit fast, so it's thank you. Yeah, if I'm going a little faster, it's weird without any feedback. It's easier to look at people and see what they do. Okay, fantastic. Side. Cool. So far we've installed Python, we've ran a script, we saw that everything is in functional condition, as well as we've ran through what the basic variables are. Okay, cool. So if your PowerShell test didn't work, that you get a specific error, you're more than welcome to unmute your mic if that's something you're willing to do, and tell me what it is. Otherwise, I can also read what your error is. You can just paste your error into the chat there, and then I can help facilitate with that. So it's possible that your PowerShell simply didn't have the link to the Python, or it's possible that the script itself had a parsing error. I'm not certain. You can't do anything. Okay. That's an interesting one. Yeah, so I'm not certain how to assist you there without knowing what is happening. I believe you can also share your screen, and then if you do that, I can have a look at that as well for you, and let's just do through that. Whatever works for you. I can assist getting that functional. Just let me know what you prefer. To the new person that joined, I don't know if you can see the history of the chat. I'm assuming you can. I posted a few links there that might be useful, as well as the workshop that I'm currently giving, the text version of that as well. I will repost that in the chat actually. Ah, you lost sound.
Hi, can you hear me? I
Yes,
think this
I
is going to
can.
be easier. Sorry,
Yeah.
man. I don't know if my installation was done wrong because I installed it when I got the email last night. But when I try the PowerShell test, it doesn't seem, it just gives me an error. So I'm not too sure what I'm doing wrong.
Yeah. So your error that you're getting, what does the error read?
Okay, I'm going to read it out to you. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to try and do the test again.
Yeah, no problem.
Test.py. So it says can't open files, no such file or directory.
Oh, okay.
Exe can't do. Yeah.
So if you look at the first part of your PowerShell there, it's going to say the location that you're at.
So it's got users and then it just says my name.
Yeah. So
which is the name of my PC. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, no problem. So did you open PowerShell, or did you hold in Shift and right click in the folder where it's at and select PowerShell?
I just opened PowerShell. Should I do it from the folder?
Yeah, if you do it from the folder, it's just a shortcut to get to the specific place where the folder is. So as you see here, I'm on my B drive where it says.
So you right click and then how do you open PowerShell?
So I right click, holding Shift, and then I get this menu.
Right click, holding Shift, right click.
Yeah.
Open PowerShell menu, open PowerShell window here. Okay, okay.
Perfect. You click on that.
Okay, okay.
And then it's in that folder. It's just a shortcut to get into that location. So there are multiple other ways to navigate there using that, but it gets a little bit more complex, and this is just a quick, simple way to get there.
Okay, so the syntax is Python space .test.py, /.test.
So you can just type Python.
Okay.
And then a space. Then you can just hit tab. And when you hit tab, it will cycle through your different files inside of that folder.
So it opens the hello world one first. Oh, okay, that works. Okay, now it works. Okay, thank you.
Perfect, no problem at all.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, if I'm going a little faster, as you said, I can.
I think I'm. Oh, okay, there's more people back now again. Okay.
Fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, no problem at all. Go. So now we've got for the new people that joined, there is a chat. I'm posting in the chat just a workshop. That is the last message sent by me. If you go there, it will take you to this page, which is just a text version of what I'm running through. I am currently this portion of it for interest sake.
I had a lot of weakness. I had a lot of counseling, so I feel good the way I am now. Yeah, compared to before.
Psychologists are treating the steady flow of damaged addicts.
Okay, so I thought Shaman was talking to me there, but they were not. So I just muted them. Cool. Perfect. So now we've done a hello world example. We've defined a few variables, and I just talked about what each variable is. Cool. So now there's another variable in there's another type of variable inside of Python. It's called the dictionary. And what a dictionary basically is it allows you to group a bunch of variables together inside a single container, inside a single variable that represents all these variables and have all their variables inside of it. So what we're going to do is, we currently have a creature that's just a bunch of variables. So we're going to group all of these into a single creature. And how that would work is, similar to if you were to, if you were to define a normal variable, you type the name of the variable you want. You say that is equal to, and then with a dictionary, how it works is, because it's a grouping of things, you put two curly brackets. Then inside of your curly brackets, your two quotes. So it's basically defining a string. Then you define the name of the variable you want. You put a colon. Instead of an equals, you put a colon inside of the dictionary. That's simply because of how the dictionary divides up its different variables inside of it.
Can I just ask you a question there?
Yes, please.
Does it matter if it's single quotes or double quotes? Because I see you now have single quotes.
So generally, they can be replaced back and forth without any concern.
Okay, thank you.
So you can use them as long as the one you start with and the one you end with is the same, then it's fine.
Okay.
It could be a double quote. Yeah, you can just use them differently to differentiate for yourself.
Okay, thank you.
It's also a stylistic and preference thing. I like if I define a string to have my string with double quotes. And if I define a value inside of the dictionary, for example, I like using single quotes myself.
Okay, so it's not going to affect the coding. It doesn't really make a difference. Okay, thank you so much.
It's just a stylistic choice.
Okay.
Cool. Then I'm going to define a string. And there we go. And then when you do the next value inside of the dictionary, you put a comma. And then you keep defining it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just replicate the value that of the creature that I've created in the dictionary. So then it's once again just the age. And then if I'm doing an int, it's simply the value, not inside of quotes. Otherwise, my int becomes a string. Good. Cool. There we go. I now have a dictionary that contains exactly the same values as my single variables. But with a dictionary, when you want to access the values inside of it, you can't just directly call name. You now have to refer to the dictionary and then ask for the name inside of it. So if I wanted to refer to recreate this print statement that I have here, which a print statement just puts it inside the console. If I wanted to replicate that, what I would do is I would go print, then I would go creature, then I would do square brackets. That means it's whatever's inside what comes before my square brackets. And then here I would then go name, and then to completely replicate it. Cool. So now if I go back to running my code and I run it, it says exactly the same thing twice. Because the values are equivalent, the one is just grouped inside of a dictionary, where the other one is simply just loose variables. So any value you have like this is referred to as a global variable. You can access it anywhere within the script, and any like my creature is a global variable, my name, my age, and all of that. Because these two are equivalent to each other, I'm just going to delete the top part. There we go. I've got a creature and it has values. Easy. So now, because it looks nice, I'm also going to just include the photo. And that works exactly the same as the name. It's just a different property of my dictionary that I'm going to be accessing. So I just put in my photo and save it, and there we go. Now my cat says hello. Cool. So those are just simply defining a few variables and how you then interact with variables with the syntax that you have. But that doesn't really do anything other than show it the values that we have. That's all it's currently doing. So then the next step that we can do is we can define actual functionality. So how you define functionality in Python is you can just directly call a function that's built into Python itself and make it do something, similar to what we do with print. Print pretty much just calls something inside of the basics of Python and it does something. But we want to do our own little bits of functionality. And the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to go and we're going to feed our creature a little bit. So let's define a function that feeds our creature. And the way that you define the function that feeds your creature is firstly you type the keyword dev. And that just means that you're going to, whatever follows is going to be the name of your function. In this case, I'm just going to call it feed creature. You can call it whatever you like. This is all example based. Any of the names of variables and things you can play around with, any of the values you can play around with, those are simply example based. Cool. So I say feed creature is the name of the thing. Then there's two circular brackets when you define a function. And what you can do with these, how do we comment in here? Oh, you mean comment in Python. So Python, if you want to comment in Python, you put a hashtag, and then whatever follows the hashtag is your comment. Simple as that. And you can do that either in its own line, or you can do it you can do it after the thing, anything like that. Cool. Cool. So then inside the two circular brackets, you can then define a variable that you're going to be passing to this function. And then after those, you put your two, your column, so you put your column. So when we feed the creature, we want to tell it which creature to feed. In this case, it's going to be our creature. But with this, you can then define cool, yeah, that's good. I agree. So inside of the two circular brackets, I'm just going to type a name of a local variable. I'm getting weird noises. Cool. So inside of the two circular brackets, I'm going to type the name of a local variable. In this case, I'm just going to call it to feed. So that can be anything you want it to be. That just is a new name for a variable that is going to be passed into this now. So then, whenever in Python, where other languages have all kinds of brackets and things to refer to stuff, Python doesn't use brackets, it uses indentation. So if I want it to be happening inside of this function, I put it underneath the feed creature. So my text editor is set up to just have tabs before spaces, and that's also my preference. Depending on how you set up your local environment, that can make a difference with Python specifically. But if you just follow the standard install, then you won't have any problems at all. Okay. So I'm going to say feed creature, and then because I know I'm going to feed it a creature, I can just treat this local variable as I would normally treat accessing a value inside of my dictionary that I have up here. So then what you do is you go to feed, and then what I want to access inside of it is whether it's hungry or not. So then hungry. So then I put in the value that I want to access, its name, inside of the two circular brackets, square brackets. And then I want to set that to false now. Cool. Now it is false. One important thing to note about Python is that its variables are not type static. So that means that you can change what it is. I can, if I accidentally put this in quotes, that is now a string. So it's no longer a boolean. It is now a string. And that's not quite ideal because you can't do a boolean check on that anymore. So just be well aware that if you assign an int to a variable that you're expecting to be a string or a string to a boolean, it will change the value to that type now. Because Python is not type static, which means the types can change. Cool. So I have fed my creature. It is now no longer hungry. Fantastic. So let's see if our function actually works and then also use it. So we're going to do this. We're going to first print the creature's name. It's going to say hello, then what the creature looks like. Then I just want to have an empty line on my console. So I just put an empty print. It's not the most efficient way, but it's quick to just show it in practice. So it's an empty line. Then I'm going to feed my creature. And now I have to, in the circular brackets, that's these circular brackets and the property there, and I need to give a value. So in this case, what this local variable is going to become is our creature, because currently we only have one creature. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to put it in here. Creature. So now it refers to this creature whenever this method actions. So it's going to do whatever is happening in here with those values. And then let's actually, to make sure this is happening, also put a print in here. And then let's be fancy about this. We go to feed the name of what we're feeding. So now when this method happens, it's going to firstly set the hunger to false, and then it's also going to notify us in the console that the creature has been fed. Okay. So if we run our script again, our cat says hello, you see your cat, and it tells you your cat has been fed. Fantastic. Cool. So a cool thing about Python is that it's a very dynamic language, and most of the functions in it can pretty much do almost anything with the values that you pass it. And if it can't, it just doesn't do it. It doesn't fail outright. So creature is my custom dictionary that I define. And it doesn't exist in Python until we define it. But what we can do is we can just go print. Put our creature in there, and Python will then be able to figure out which one of these is what and then put it into our console for us. So let's give that a go. There we go. And there we can see our dictionary just as our dictionary is. Its name, you can also see there that it's no longer hungry because we did set it to false when we fed our creature down here. Cool. So as far as Tamagotchis go, this is not the most engaging one, but right now we've got a super basic Tamagotchi that does the thing. It feeds a creature. So the next step is it cutting out. I'm not sure if that's from my side or your side, but I'll talk a bit slow and hopefully that helps with that. So I am recording this, and I will make that video available. If you do miss something like that, that's important. Okay, so you missed the last few sentences. Let me quickly recap. So I don't know how far you missed, but basically what we have now is we've got a function that we defined that has a local variable that we define as our dictionary that we have. as well as we have a new print statement here at the bottom that we just feed in our dictionary. And that's simply so we can see the values, as well as it's to show that Python is a very dynamic language. If it can do something with the values you have, it does it. If it can't, it just won't throw an error. It will just do its best as far as it can. And that applies to many of the functions that you write yourself as well. Cool. So the next step now is let's add some logic into this equation that we've got here, this code play, pretty much. So what we've got is we've currently just got a function that we feed the creature. So let's add a bit of logic to that to just make it a bit more complex. So one of the basic logic functions one can do in programming is you can do a condition check. So you can just compare two things, and then if they are the same, or if it's similar or dissimilar, and those kind of things, you can do something if it is and something else if it isn't. And the way we do that kind of comparison in programming is you do an if check. It's one of the most basic logic operators that we have in programming. So to do it if in Python, the syntax is pretty much you go if, then you have the condition that you check. In our case, we're going to check if the creature that we have is hungry. So let's check if it's hungry. So then you put, instead of one equal sign, which assigns a value, you put two equal signs that checks if it is. You can also do a exclamation mark equals, which is then if it is not. But in our case, we just want to check if it is hungry, in this case true, because it's a Boolean value, which is true or false. So if it is hungry, what we wanted to do is we want to go and say, remember with Python, you don't have brackets, you've got indentation that functions similar to brackets. So I put both my setting the Boolean to false as well as my printing the result inside of it. So I've got my if, I've got my condition, and then I've got a colon. So the colon means my condition has ended. Now do the test. That's what the colon is there for. It just ends your condition off, because I can add more and more conditions there and compare multiple conditions against each other, but for now we're keeping it simple. So if it is hungry, I want it to not be hungry, as well as say that it has been fed. So let's also just add in a thing where we go, our creature that we are referring to, let's increase its weight. Cool. So I have our creature, then we say our creature's weight, I want to increase it. And there is all kinds of cool syntaxes to write it, but the simplest way to just increase the weight is we say the weight is equal to the weight itself plus, let's say, 0.5. Cool. So now our creature will no longer be hungry, as well as it will have a weight increase. So now that is if it is hungry. So if it's not hungry, that's the alternative, that's the comparison's other side. Then we're going to put in an else. So you put in an else, and then similar to where you have your if, you have your colon at the end to say your condition is not there. I can here after the else put in another if and more conditions, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to end it. So similarly, you put your colon there. And then I'm going to say just a value to the console to say it is not hungry. So I'm once again going to use the name of my creature. Not hungry. Fantastic. Cool. So now my creature has some logic in it. If it is hungry, it's going to eat. Otherwise, it's not going to eat. So let's try that out. To clear your console, you simply type in clear. I'm just going to clear mine so it's not messy. And then I'm going to run my script. My cat says hello, and my cat has been fed and is now fed. So let's change this to false. Go back here. And now my cat was not hungry. Cool. So it's a simple if check. It's a bit of logic just to check it out. So currently we've got one creature. Let's increase the amount of creatures we have and then do another type of variable. So currently we've got one creature. I'm just going to change its name to _1. And then I'm going to add a second creature called creature _2. Call this one rat. Make it a bit younger. Way less. It's not hungry. Just to have a difference. I've got an emoji picture for it as well. Fantastic. Cool. Okay. So now, sorry, if someone gets stuck in the waiting room, I'm not sure how that works. I'm new to Zoom. Okay. So now we have two creatures. But if we had to write this code over and over and over for the two creatures, it would just become a really long script that does very basic things, a lot of text over and over, and we don't necessarily have to do that. So what we can do is, where a dictionary is a collection of different variables that each is a name as well as a value, there's another type of a collection variable in Python that's called a list. So how a list works is you also give it a name, as well, and then you also just set equal to something. And where with a dictionary, you have your curly brackets. A list has two square brackets. And then you can put your values in there. There we go. We now have a list. So how a list works is it differentiates that it's got its name, and then these don't have a name and then a value, a name and a value. They are simply indexed. So this one is number 0, this one's number 1, and it's just a collection that is indexed instead of having multiple values like a dictionary. Okay, so now obviously all of this code here is no longer going to function the same, but that's okay. What that allows us to do is we can now do another function of Python, and that is your loops. So what we're going to do is, because we've now got a collection of these creatures, we're simply going to loop over them. So do the same thing multiple times for the different things. And one of the most basic loops is a for loop. And what a for loop does is it does something for each one of the things in a collection of some kind. So you go for every, for every creature. So creature is simply the name of its local variable that it creates, similar to the toFeed variable. For the creature, in our collection, that is our creatures collection, that is this list that we have here, we want to do, and then you put your colon again, and then the indented level of that, for each one of our creatures, inside of creatures, what we're going to do is we want to just simply replicate what we had before, where we say its name and then all of that. But instead of typing all of that out, I'm just going to copy some code I have to just not replicate myself over and over. So what we're going to do is we're going to just put a little line down. We're going to say hello to our creature's name. We're going to put down the picture's photo. we're going to say what the weight of the creature is. Then we're going to feed our creature. And this local variable here, as you can see, we're just using the local variable similar to what we did with the toFeed, which was the local variable for our function. We feed our creature with our local for our function, and then we just check its weight again to see if our creature got a little bit fatter. Cool. Let's try that out. So we're just gonna run our script again. There we go. First, our cat says hi, and we see its weight is 2.4. It has been fed. And then our rat says hi. Its weight does not change because it was not hungry, with its variable being false. Cool. Any questions, concerns, queries so far? Comments are welcome as well. Cool. Cool. Okay. So we've got a few basic variables. We've got collection variables, similar our dictionaries. We've got our list. We went over how you do a function, and then we did a loop. Those are all simply. Am I still going a bit fast? I apologize. It's strange talking to a screen. Okay. I'll slow down a little bit. But,
Hi.
yes.
Sorry. No, it's just I think because you pasted that whole lot of code, I couldn't type it as fast as that. But I'm understanding what you're doing. So if you're gonna just send us the screen recording afterwards, I'll be able to follow with that. So it's okay.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
But it's just when you pasted that code, then I got lost completely because I couldn't type as fast. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Sorry. It's a good feedback. I will refrain from doing so in the future.
Yeah, because if you're typing it, I can still manage to type it out as you're typing it. But when you pasted it, I definitely got lost then. So
yeah.
Okay.
For reference sake, the text version of this thing I'm running through does include that bit of code if you want to copy it yourself.
Oh, is it? Okay. Okay, I'll have a look because I did open it up.
Yeah, I'm very much working from it as my own notes.
Okay. So I'll check from there then. But the video recording will be helpful because then I can just follow with it again afterwards to practice.
Yeah, it does record this whole call and all the interactions. So,
okay, thank you.
Cool. So just as once again a recap, we've got our dictionaries, our lists, our functions, and then a basic loop. So it's still not really a very interactive program. It very much just runs and does its own things in its background. So let's add some interaction to this little program of ours that we have. So the first, most basic way to get any interaction into a Python program is to use the input function that Python has. So what the input does, it is similar to print, where all you simply do is you type in input. So you type in input, and then you, in the two circular brackets, you type a prompt. So what the prompt is just the text that it's going to display, and then it's going to pause there, and then the user can type something in and hit enter, and then it will accept that response and store it into a variable. So what we're going to do is we're going to type in, well, let me actually just show you what it does. Hold on, sorry, I confused myself for a second. Okay. So, sure. Don't know why I got confused now for a second. Right. Okay, cool. So how input works is you just put a variable name down, Then you say input and you put your prompt in there. And as simple as that, it will, whatever the user types in, it will put into the variable for you. Cool. So with that knowledge, let's allow the user to rename one of your pets. So to do that, we're just going to say print, and then I'll also show you how to refer to items in a list separately while I'm at it. So we're going to print, and then we're going to say the first creature that we have is, and then to refer to the first creature or the first entry into a list, all you do is you type the list's name, 2 square brackets, similar to what you did with your dictionary to access the different values inside of it. But instead of typing in a value name similar to the name or hungry or weight or the photo or any other aspects of the dictionary, with a list, it's an indexed collection. So it's technically a zero-based index. So what that means is it starts at 0, it goes to 1, and then the third entry is 2, and so forth and so on. So to access the first creature in the list, it's 0. So if I type that in, what it will do is it will, in our console, then return the first creature. So let's see if it does that. Apparently, I don't know what I'm doing. That's cool. No, let's not do that. That's jumping ahead. What I wanted to do. Yeah, let's not do that. Sorry, I am completely losing my mind. It's very weird doing digital. I apologize. Here I am. Cool. Let's follow my notes. That's what they're there. Okay. So what we're going to do is, rather than renaming things and messing with that, let's simply just add one. That's a lot simpler to do from explaining from my notes perspective. So to add a new creature, I'm going to define a function that adds a new creature. So similar to my feed creature, I go define. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the function a name. In this case, I want to add a creature, so it's going to be add creature. And to feed the creature, I was referring to a specific creature. In this case, I'm not going to be referring to a specific creature anymore. I'm just going to be running this function without feeding it any values beforehand. And inside, I will be using the input that I just referred to get values from the user while the application is running, instead of predefining all the values. So I just put 2 empty circular brackets. Then it's once again the colon. Then indenting, I'm going to go print. Let's add a creature. Cool. So now, what we want to do is we want to add a new creature. And the demo of input I wanted to do, we're going to go and say a new variable, name, because this is going to be a name, is equal to input. And then what we want to do is we want to ask the user for a name for a creature. So we go, what do you want to creature? Question mark. And I put a space. Cool. So now it will ask the user what it wants to call the creature. Whatever the user types in and then hits enter, it will put inside of name. Cool. Then the next one, the next property we have in creatures is the age. So we go age is equal to input once again. And then how old is the creature? But now our age is an integer. It's a whole number. But the input function only returns strings, because whatever the user types in, it accepts as a string. So Python has this built-in option that allows you to convert any variable to a different variable type. So in this case, we simply want the integer. And the function to convert a string to an integer in Python is simply int. So all you do is you put, it's also a function. So you put your input inside of your int function, and now your age will be an integer that is input by the user with their keyboard. Cool. Then the next one, what we want to do is we want to have the weight. It's also just the input once again. Heavy is the creature. Cool. So the weight has a similar problem as the integer, where our weight was a floating number, so a fraction. But a fraction is not an int. The way that you turn a string into a fraction in Python is you just type in float, because it's a floating number or a fraction. So that means it's a number with a dot between the first and the second number. And that can be whatever that is. Cool. So that's the weight. Because we're adding a new creature, I'm going to just assume that our creature is going to be hungry. So I'm going to take the hungry variable, and I'm just going to say that yes, it is. So we could do a similar thing as with the int and the float, because it's a bool or a boolean. It's just different namings for the same concept. Is we would just put a bool there, but I like thinking that new creatures are hungry. And then we allow the user to enter the photo. And because our photos are simply strings, all we're going to do is we're going to go and we're going to take an input from the user. How does the creature look? Cool. And because input gives you back a string, it goes into the photo as a string, and there we go. Now we're getting values back from the user, and they're going into these variables, but it's not yet creating a new creature. It's simply going into these variables files. So then what we're going to do is, for now, I just kind of want to see what this creature is going to look like. So I'm just going to do a print statement where I'm just going to have a little nicely formatted string with all the variables in the string, and just return that to us so we can see what it looks like. So let's go. The new creature is called. We put the name, which is the name of the creature. It is. I'll put in the age. And I also just want to see the photo. We can do all of them, but this is an example of just a few. Cool. So now we've got our function, but currently it's not running anywhere. So we're never calling this function to see what it does. So I'm going to write at the end, after we fed our current creatures that we have, we're just going to add a creature. And then the two circular brackets. There's no value that goes into the circular brackets because there isn't a value going into it and doesn't accept a value going into it. It won't cause any problems if you put a value in there, because Python's fairly forgiving in that, but it's just not necessary. Cool. And it also doesn't do anything with any of the values inside of those circular brackets, because there's no parameters that we're passing to this function. Yeah. So one thing to be aware of is this function, I'm calling it right at the beginning again. I'm not indenting it, because if I were to indent this, after each time it goes through one of these creatures, and because there's 2 creatures in our creature list, it's gonna do it twice if it's indented, because then it's still counted as part of the for loop. But we don't want it to be part of the for loop. We only want to, after we fed our current creatures, add a new creature. So let's check this out. Cool. So our Fluffy got fed, our rat was not hungry, and then it goes, let's add a creature. What do you want to call this creature? So this new creature, I'm just gonna call Goose. So I type in my values, then I hit enter, and then it asks me how old is this creature. So it's simply doing all these inputs. So then I'm gonna say it's 2. How heavy is my creature? Oh, I can spell it right there. So this is a float value. So it doesn't have to be a float, it can just be 1, but let's put in a float value to put in a float value. How does the creature look? And then I think I've got another emoji somewhere. I do not, but I'm just going to use my rat again. Yeah. So to paste into your PowerShell console, you copy from anywhere you want to copy. So I can just copy my rat here. And then you right click in the console, and then it will paste whatever is currently in your clipboard. That's awesome. Yours worked and mine did not. I am so happy about that. That's great. Cool. Well, if yours worked, that is good. That was just to show an example. Apparently, I should not improvise from my notes, because then things go badly. Okay. So there we go. You have your inputs, and they take in values and they do things. And you get your values. Cool. So currently, these are just saving into little local variables. And the thing about saving into local variables is those aren't currently going anywhere. So we do want to add them as a new creature into our list. So let's do that, and then mine will work when I follow my proper thing. Sorry, I should probably not improvise. I'm not good at that. Okay, so to add a new creature, what we need to do is first create a creature variable. So the creature variable we're going to create, I'm just going to create the variable first and then use the variable. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and I'm going to say new creature, that is the name of the variable, is equal to 2 curly brackets. So those are just 2 empty curly brackets. I can put in normal dictionary values like that. It doesn't matter. You can put other values in. I can decide any new creature I add has a specific attribute to it that the other ones don't. You can add that in there, but for this use case, I'm not gonna do that. Then my new creature, here, I'm simply gonna, similar to how when we access the values of a dictionary, so when we fed our creature and we access the hungry and all that, if the value doesn't exist in it, because this dictionary is empty, it creates that value for you. Cool. So here I've got a new creature with a name. So now our new creature's name is being put to the input that the user put in. Fantastic. Then our age, let's make that happen the same way. Cool. Then our weight. Hungry value, also the same. And then the photo, also the exact same. Cool, so now what it's doing is it's creating a new creature and then assigning these inputs into our creature's value. So we've got a new dictionary that has all these values. So let's have a look at that. We go print our new creature. Cool. So now when it runs add creature, it creates a new dictionary and adds these values that the user enters into the dictionary as entries. Cool. Cool. What do you want to call this creature? Goose. How old is this creature? 2. How heavy is this creature? 1.2. How does this creature look? Copy my rat again. Okay. So now, as you can see, it just prints out our dictionary with its name, weight, da 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 da. Cool, and that would work perfectly. Cool. There we go. But it's now not part of our other creatures. This also works. Charmaine, I see you say that you've been kicked out of it several times. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if that's your side or my side, but my network is fairly stable, so I'm hoping it's not mine. But I'm recording what I'm doing, so I will make sure that's made available, that you can refer to that in case you miss something due to dropping out. Cool. So now we have our add creature, and it defines all of that and puts it into a nice dictionary for us. Cool. But it's not part of our creatures. So any built into Python data type or collection or anything like that. Yeah. So any of the built into Python data types and variable types and all of those, they've got functionality for us that's functions that do stuff with them. And one of those for lists is this one called append that just adds stuff to it. And there's a large amount of them, like you can add stuff, you can move stuff and all of that. For now, I'll just cover adding stuff. I'll get to removing stuff later on. So let's do that. Let's actually add this new dictionary that we have to our collection of things. So still within the indentation of our add creature function, we say our creatures, which is this creatures here. We want to append to it. So what append does is it adds to the end of it. We want to append to it our new creature. Cool. So now our new creature is being made part of our collection of creatures. So we're going to just take this function of ours that we have, and I'm going to move it up so it happens before our loop where we run through all the creatures inside of creatures. Cool. Hi to the new 2 people that just joined in. I'll just post the notes in the chat once again. The notes of what I'm doing is in the chat, and recording will be made available. So if you feel a bit lost, I've got you. Cool. So now we start with adding our stuff, adding our creature, and then we run to our collection. So let's try this out. we run our script. It goes, let's add a creature. What do you want to call this creature? How old is this creature? How heavy is this creature? How does the creature look? No. I don't still have my rat in my clipboard. Oh, simply copy my rat again. There we go. Now it runs through my cat, my rat, and my rat looking goose. Cool. So it works. Fantastic. So that is converting variables to specific types because we want them in specific types, as well as using the basic input that we have. Cool. Any questions, queries, concerns at this point where we're at? Okay, cool. So at this point, we've got a fairly basic, some interaction, but not really a lot of interaction with our Tamagotchi little toy app. Cool. So now, every time I run this thing, it's going to ask me to add a new feature. I don't necessarily always want to do that. So let's just, while we're busy quickly using the stuff we just went through, use it to make it optional to add stuff. So when we went through the if, and then we also went through input. So I'm going to go if, and then we ask the user if they actually want to add a new creature. Do you want to add a new creature? And now, with a if and dealing with user inputs, I don't want to have to deal with all the large variety of options people can respond with. So I'm simply going to give them a two-prong option. I'm going to go y or n. Cool. I'm going to say that is equal to, if it is a y, I wanted to add a creature. So do you want to add a creature? Yes or no? And if they say yes, add a creature. But now, if the user types in a small letter y or a big letter y, is also going to make a difference because if you're comparing strings, they have to be exact for it to pass. Otherwise, it's going to fail. So the easiest way to deal with that eventuality is simply using another one of those built into the base data properties in Python that I spoke of earlier when we did the append for lists. Strings have a thing called upper. So if you use upper on a string, it just makes it uppercase. You also have low and a variety of other ones where you can combine strings and all those kind of sort them and remove stuff, and make them come uppercase and all kinds of different built-in stuff. And there's way more than I will ever be able to mention. So I will just mention that they do exist all in the Python docs, very nicely laid out. And I posted that in the chat, and it's also referenced in my notes. That's just another example at hand that I am using. The upper. Cool. So now we ask the user that they want to add a creature, and then we add the creature and run through all the features that we got. Cool. But now every time we run this app, it starts from scratch. It doesn't have any persistence to it at all. We kind of want this app to remember our creatures that we have, and then also if we add creatures, it should remember our new ones, because otherwise, what's the point of having a virtual pet toy if it doesn't remember that you fed it 2 seconds ago? So let's add a bit of code that will make it save what we've got in our creature set. So what we're going to use to do that is I'm simply going to run through how do you save something using a bit of JSON. So what JSON is, it's a data format that was originally made for JavaScript. That's simply a human readable data format that we can save values as. So to do that, we're going to cover a new thing we haven't done before, and that is import. So what import does is inside of Python, Python comes with a large amount of libraries of code that handles all kinds of different things that you don't necessarily need for every app. So not every script or every app has that, but you want to sometimes use JSON, for example. So then they have that available. It's just not baked into everything, so you don't have access to everything. It's a security thing, as well as it stops your app from being too bloated and big. So the way that you get those kind of standard libraries and access to them is you import them. So you type in import, and then we specifically want to use JSON right now. So we say JSON. Cool. So we imported JSON. We do it right at the top of the file, so it is available to the rest of the file. And it also doesn't slow your app down, gets there and then has to import the library. It's generally not a concern. Those kind of things are fairly fast, but you do just want to do it at the top of your script for standard sake. Cool. So now that we have our JSON imported, we want to save what we've got at the moment. So we've got all our creatures and we want to save them. So let's define a new function. Our new function, I'm simply going to call save, because it's just going to save. We also, I'm not going to tell it where to save it or any of that. We're just going to hard code all of that for simplicity's sake. So we are saving, and then to save, we need a file. So we create a new variable called file. And then Python has this thing where you can just open a file and set it to write or read mode. And then if that file exists, it will use that file as it has it. So we're going to go File, Open. I'm opening a file. And then I'm going to say what the file name is. In this case, I'm going to call it creatures.json. You could theoretically have it .anything else, but if it's .json, it's just nicer for your text editors to immediately pick up what it is. And it's standard to just make your file extension the same as the type of data that you put inside of it. Like a JPEG is always the .jpeg and a PNG is always the .png for standard reasons, and it makes computers happy. Cool. And then I put a comma, and then the second parameter that I put into this function is going to be a W, a small w, because I'm going to be writing to this file. So all this does is it takes this variable, and inside of this variable it says, please refer to that file. And I want to be writable to that file. Cool. Cool. So I've got my file that I'm going to be using to write all my stuff to. Then I'm going to go JSON. That's the JSON that I imported. The same name. So JSON.dump. So what .dump does is it simply puts all the stuff in JSON format inside of a file. So then the first parameter for that is creatures, in our case, because the first parameter is simply the data that you want to dump to that file. And then the second parameter, is actually the file that we're dumping these things to. So in our case, it's the file. Cool. And then once we're done with the file, we can simply close the file. So you can leave that out. It's not a major concern. It will work because Python's very forgiving, but you should close that so it doesn't have Python keep trying to use this file, but you're not actually using this file. Cool. We've now got a save function that saves our creatures to a file. Cool. So once we've asked users if they wanted to create a new creature, and if they did, they created a new creature. If they didn't, they simply ran through the creatures they have and fed all of them. After all of that, we're simply going to go and call our new method that saves, and we're going to save. Cool. So let's check out if this works, which it will. So I want to create a new feature. I'm going to say N for no, and then it fed my creatures that I wanted to feed. So now, because I simply said creature.json and not a specific location it wanted to go, it defaulted to making it in the same folder where my script is at. So if I go back to my script, I see there is now my creature.json file. So if I go into the creature.json file, there we see. It's our list. As you see, there's the two square brackets with our dictionaries inside, with the curly brackets with the values inside. The reason it's exactly the same is simply because it's coincidental that the notation lines up between JSON and Python. It won't always be exactly the same, but it works out fairly nicely and we get to see it, and it's human readable data. So now we've got saving of our stuff at the end of this process. After we either added a new feature or didn't, it saves this to a file. Cool. But now that's it. We're just saving. We're not loading what we've already done. So if I added a new feature, the next time I do it, it wouldn't be aware of that. So let's simply load the file that we now have. So now let's define a new function. We're going to call this one load. And we also don't need any location where it's going to load. You can do that. It will work exactly the same as this feed feature. It's a local variable there. And then you can specify a specific file, but you can make multiple save files and all of that if you wanted to. But for this example, we're not going to do that. So to load the file, it works very similar to how you would save. Because the first thing you do is you have to say what file it is that we're going to work with. So we say file. It's going to be equal to open once again. And where the key difference here comes in, it's the same file. So I'm just going to copy the file there. Where the key difference comes in here, where we have a W for write at the save, with the load we want to read. So I put a small r in there. Cool. Now our file is reading. Fantastic. So now we want to load these JSON saved files back into Python data for our list that we have here of creatures to be a list of creatures again. I'm just going to collapse these for sake of reading. Cool. So then we go creatures is equal to JSON load, and then that's once again our file. So all it does is the JSON library that we imported here at the top will then load, so it will turn JSON data into Python data structures, our file. So any of the JSON that's inside of this file, it will convert into Python data. Cool. But what we've got here right now, unfortunately, will not work. And the reason for that is features here, if you look here at our add creatures, where I go creatures is equal, new creatures equal to my two empties, what it's doing is it's creating a new one. So what it's doing is it's interpreting this creatures is equal to JSON.load as a new local variable is equal to the JSON.load. And that is right. That's what it's going to try and do, but it's not what we want it to do. What we want to do is we want to access this creatures list that we already have. So the way that you access this list you already have is, well, at the beginning I mentioned that any of the values we have here are global variables, and any of these inside of functions and things are local variables to that function. It only exists inside of the function where these exist across the whole script. So because that's a global across the whole script function, I'm simply going to go and inform it that I do in fact want to use my global one. So in the line above where I use creatures, I say global creatures, and that's very much just making sure that whenever I use creatures inside of this function, it's not using a local variable creatures, it's actually using my global one. It just signifies that to Python, and Python's aware of what my intentions are. Cool. So now I've got a load function, and that will load in all the data I have. So I want to load at the beginning of my program. So I'm going to say load right at the top before I even ask the user if they wanted to create a new creature. Cool. Done. So now let's give this a run. Run it. So I want to add a creature. So previous time I ran it, I did not add a creature. So there's only going to be 2 creatures, but the weight is going to now be higher than the values that we already have in here. But this time around, I'm going to add a creature. So I put a small y, and because of that upper that we have there, it makes everything uppercase. It will be equal to the big Y. I don't have to specifically use a big Y. Cool. It runs our adding method. What do I want to call my creature? Goose. How old is this creature? 1. How heavy is this creature? 2. How does the creature look? I'm once again just going to copy my rat because I like the rat. Cool. So now there is Fluffy, my cat, was not hungry. My rat was not hungry. My goose has been fed. So these 2 are not hungry because Fluffy got fed earlier and that data got saved into our file. So now, the next time I run it, and I say I don't want to create a creature, it remembers my goose because it loaded the file at the beginning of the process and then saved the file at the end of the process. So if I go to the file itself as well, you'll see goose is now right at the end as well. Cool. So now we've got basic JSON saving and loading of our thing. So one important thing to note is the way we went through this process is I had us do the saving first and then the loading. And part of the reason for that is if we were to load while there wasn't the file, it would have just went, I don't have a file, and it's got an error, and would have stopped and not continued past that. So a way that we get past that problem is we do something where we go, does my file exist? Yes. And if my file exists, it does the thing. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't load the file. So let's put something like that up. So if we're going to load the file, what we wanted to do, instead of just loading the file, we wanted to try and load the file. So the way that you make it try and do something is you quite literally type in try, and you put your colon down, and then we just indent all of that functionality that we have into underneath the try. And then there we go. Now it will try and do that. And if it can't do that, it won't throw an error, it will simply not do that. But if we're going to try, we have to then also say, what happens if it fails? So the way you say what happens if it fails, and because we are loading a file, we go except, and then we say file not found error. Because it's going to try and open a file, and if it doesn't exist, it's going to go file not found. So there we go. And then we go print no saved. It's not features. So now we'll try and load the file, and if the file does not exist, it will just simply tell us there are no saved ones. So there's about 16 minutes left of this scheduled workshop. So if there's any questions or concerns, please raise those now. Otherwise, I'll just continue showing you guys just a few polishing bits and pieces and then go from there. Cool. Cool. So, yeah, okay. So let's just put in a few print lines to just make sure that it looks, so we have feedback on everything that's happening, so it feels more like a fully completed thing. So I'm just going to put in a loaded, saved features in there, and then there are added creatures. This one, let's add a creature. Cool. Fed was not hungry. Saving here. Let's put in another print. So currently, our app, our script only runs every time we call it, and when we call it and the creature hasn't been fed, it will be fed, and otherwise it won't be fed. And that's it. So creatures are at some point just going to all start going, we're not hungry. But that's also not quite right, because eventually everyone gets hungry. So I also remember I had a spelling mistake there. It's been bugging me every time I run it. Cool. So let's adjust that. In our else of our feed creature, let's just put in once again, you refer to the to feed. Cool. So what it's doing now is if the creature was fed and it changed it to it's no longer hungry, the next time it runs and it gets there, it's going to go, okay, I am actually hungry now. So it changes its mind and it becomes hungry. So with the third time you run it, in that case, it will then eat again. Cool. That's just a small thing. Cool. And let's just add a intro greeting. And that's just some spacing things. Cool. There we go. Let's give it a run and see what we got. Welcome to the loaded saved creatures. Welcome to a Tamagotchi code toy. You want to add a creature? In this case, no. There we go. Fluffy was not hungry. Da, da, da. So we also added this load situation of ours that checks if we have a file or not. So let's see how that functions. If we go and we delete our creatures file, and then we go and we run our script again, it goes no saved creatures. So instead of having a problem with there not being a file, it simply goes, okay, the file doesn't exist. I tried to get it, I couldn't. Let's return the message that we have there for what you say when you can't find the file. Cool. Is there anything that I went over too fast or someone missed that I can refer to or explain better or anything like that? Cool. Yeah. Can we do one test of adding a creature? Mine seems broken for that part. Yeah, cool. Fantastic. So if we go to add creature, I'll just explain how it works, and then maybe you spot something there. Why it still goes to display? How do you mean when you type why it still goes to display? Ah, yes.
Okay, so if I run it, what happens is when I say why, it just shows me hello with Fluffy and the rat. It shows all of that, and it says saved our changes to the creatures. So it reacts as if I put in no instead of yes.
Okay, yeah, cool. So then your if statement where you have your input, and you say equals capital Y.
Okay, that's where my mistake is. Thank you.
Okay, cool, yeah.
That's exactly where I have yes instead of Y. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you so much.
So then you could have it as yes, and just type in yes, and then it will work like that.
Thank you so much. It's fixed.
No problem. Yeah. Yeah, so this is just a little practical example of hopefully something a bit more entertaining than a calendar app to explain the basics of Python and all the small components of Python. Just a little introduction. I hope that made sense to everyone. Yeah.
Thank you. It was really good. I didn't know any Python before this, and it's been like everything's worked so far. So thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so Python is a fairly nice, forgiving language in that it doesn't have any very strict syntax or anything like that. It's very approachable from that standpoint.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Oh. Yeah, I hope I covered everything in a way that made sense to everyone. Yeah. Cool. Yes. Cool. Thank you. I'm glad that it transfers nicely. Cool, yeah. Okay, cool. If there's not any major concerns, queries, or anything like that, I think I'm done. Cool, yeah. I don't know, you say you joined late, so yes, the recording I will upload, and then also, don't know if you saw this, but here, nope, what? Apparently I can send private messages on this, so to whoever I just send a thing, I apologize. There we go. If you go there and you click on Workshop 1, it's the text version of the thing. And yeah, I got a little bit further than I was expecting, so I'll just push my last commit up with the end, but with the JSON stuff that I can't drive at the end, because I went a little bit faster than I was expecting to. Yeah, so as to where can you use Python, can you use it to create a system? So Python is generally used for your fast, intense kind of data science kind of things, like a lot of AI work, a lot of simulation work, a lot of the mining stuff all uses Python to run their backends and all those kind of things. So Python is a fairly dynamic thing. A lot of web backends also run Python. Yeah, Python's a very diverse language that is used all over the place. And part of the next bit that I'll cover in future workshops is doing some UI, because this was all in the console, but all the UI frameworks just require you to have a bit of a background for this, which is what this workshop pretty much covered, just an introduction to the basics of it. So then the next one will probably include some UI, because you can do that now, but you have the basics on the. Cool. When you ask, can you use it to create a system? Do you have any particular system in mind? Cool. I asked simply to better elaborate on your question. So there are some things that Python's not good at, like you wouldn't make a mobile app with Python because it's not optimized for those kind of CPU ranges, but it does work really nice for other things, like a large list of other things, comparatively. Cool. Yeah, if there's not any more questions, I think I will conclude this workshop. Well, thank you guys for coming. It was awesome giving a workshop. It was interesting giving one digitally. I have never done a digital one before, but it was a good experience. I will adjust a few of the way I do things for making it easier for digital. I've learned a few things. I hope you guys have learned a few things about Python. And yeah, cool, awesome. Thanks for coming. That is that. Cheers. How do I stop this?